Okay, welcome everyone to Let's Talk. This is July 24th, 2018. So today's topic is the name of our Guru Maharaj, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we want to discuss his name and kind of like the background, the history of how that name and title, etc., how it all came about over time. So I don't think we have to go into all the details because I think they're most everybody knows. I would say most everybody knows the story of Srila Prabhupada's birth and him being named Abhay Charan and then later getting the nickname Kachori, not Kishori, Kachori Mukhi, because he liked to eat kachoris, etc., etc. All right, so we don't need to tell much about that. I think everybody knows that. The reason that we're making this this video is there is some, in some cases, a lack of understanding regarding Srila Prabhupada's name, and there is sometimes a lack of information. And in other words, we're going to present particularly one very unique aspect of Prabhupada's name and title that many contemporary devotees who are even direct disciples of Srila Prabhupada and probably in more cases second generation or third generation, however many generations there are at this time. But anyway, there are, for the most part, probably many devotees out there who do not know. They just know what his name is and what his title is, but they don't really have any clear idea about it, and it sometimes raises there's a confusion. So we want to discuss that. So let's begin with 1933. Srila Prabhupada takes initiation. He met Bhaktisiddhanta in 1922, but he takes initiation, formally initiated, in 1933. And I might just add here at this point for devotees' information that he received both Harinam and Mantra Diksha at the same function at the same time. So he received first and second initiation, as we call it, at the same time. This was not a common practice, but it was not an unheard of practice either. And Srila Prabhupada was not the only disciple to have ever received first and second initiation at the same time. But that's how it occurred, 1933. So his birth name, Abhay Charan, he was known previously up to his initiation as Abhay Babu. And then at his initiation, he received from Bhaktisiddhanta Abhay Charanaravinda. So Abhay Charan became Abhay Charanaravinda. So the name given to him by his father at birth was then extended from Abhay Charan to Abhay Charanaravinda. So I was curious, and I asked you if you would do some research. Was Srila Prabhupada the only disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta to receive the name Abhay Charanaravinda? Because we know that in Prabhupada's own legacy, our Guru Maharaj's own legacy, that some names were repeatedly given. The other day I was looking at the list of the names of Prabhupada disciples, and I saw in one case, I think there was even 4, it could have been maybe even 5 devotees between 1973 and 1977 receiving the same name. They were in different temples, of course, different places in the world, but they received the same name. So then I was just curious, was Prabhupada the only disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta to receive the name Abhay Charanaravinda? So, yeah, I think you do you have anything to inform us on that? If so, go ahead and tell us and give us as much detail as you were able to come up with.
Sure. Well, some time ago, I was looking through the Gaudiya magazine, which was the monthly magazine of the Gaudiya Math, back in the 1920s and 30s. And I came across an obituary to a disciple of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Sarji Thakur, who was a Vrajavasi. He was born in Vrindavan, and his initiated name was Abhay Charanaravinda Das.
Oh, really?
So he passed away in 1922, I believe, 1922, yeah, 22. So I have no more information about that devotee, but I know that was his initiated name. He was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta.
And
he passed away in 1922.
And he was a Brajabasi.
He's a Vrajavasi. Yeah. So that's all I found out. That's the information, but that was quite interesting.
Well, that's cosmically interesting from another point of view. Those who don't believe in coincidences or maybe divine coincidences is so this early disciple, Brajabasi, he was probably an elderly gentleman, unless he passed away untimely in 1922. And that means he was among the earliest of disciples, I would say. Do you know? Did you know when he was initiated?
No, I didn't mention when he was initiated. There was no mention of that. It was a very short paragraph.
Okay. So 1922 happens to be the year that our Guru Maharaj, that Prabhupada first met Bhaktisiddhanta, when Abhay Charan Day, Day being his family name, Abhay Charan Day first met Bhaktisiddhanta was 1922 also. So we don't know. It may be possible that that Bhaktisiddhanta had something in mind in relation to that, or it may be just pure coincidence. But add further to the fact that Prabhupada took up his residence and eternal place of bhajan in Vrindavan at Radha Damodar. Well, if one wanted to entertain those types of thoughts, it wouldn't be too much out of the question. But we never know. But there was a disciple then of Bhaktisiddhanta prior to Srila Prabhupada, and it was and that means 11 years. Yes, 11 years after the departure of Abhay Charanaravinda, another Abhay Charanaravinda joined the ranks as official disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. All right, so I think pretty much everybody knows about Prabhupada being initiated in 1933, receiving the extended name to his name, Abhay Charanaravinda. All right, so then time goes on. That is 1933, and I just wanted to also point out something here. It's just a little footnote kind of interest, is that the well-known Vyasa Puja offering that Srila Prabhupada wrote to Bhaktisiddhanta in 1936, signed Abhay Charan Day, not Abhay Charanaravinda, Abhay Charan Day. So, I mean, I noticed this many years ago. And then I also noticed around the same time Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor. Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor even wrote wrote articles for Prabhupada, our Prabhupada's Back to Godhead magazine. Srila Prabhupada actually instructed Jayadvaita Swami that publish more articles by O.B.L. Kapoor, and this will enhance the quality of your Back to Godhead magazine, or of the Back to Godhead magazine. I forget exactly the wording of that letter. So, but then it dawned on me that O.B.L. Kapoor, O.B.L., I never really did catch. Did you? What was O.B.?
Ode Bihari. Ode is the old name is the sort of British name for Ayodhya. So okay. Ayodhya Bihari. So Ode Bihari.
Ayodhya Bihari. But then I came to know that wasn't his initiated name.
No.
He was a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, but his name was Adi Keshava Das. So then, with the capacity I had, I looked around and I just kind of observed a few things around the Gaudiya Math. And then I kind of understood, I don't want to say realized, it's not a point of realization, maybe, but I kind of understood that if you were a householder and you were an initiated disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, and you were living outside the mutt, you were living in the world, you were a teacher, you were a pharmacist, you were so many things. You may be in the world and still be a disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta, but it seems like the cultural practice at that time was, if you were outside the mutt, well, it was a given that you weren't engaged in 24 Astaka Leela service, 24-hour, 7-day, 24/7 service, because you were maintaining family, you were working your job, and so many things. And it appears, if that was your position, even though you were initiated, you didn't sign and weren't always referred to by your initiated name.
Right.
I mean, otherwise it raises the question. Otherwise, why would Prabhupada, after being a disciple for 3 years, sign a Vyasa puja offering as a Baicharan day?
Mm-hmm.
So we'll never know, maybe, because I've never come across any official written record to the statement of why people like Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor, although initiated, Adi Keshava Das remained in the world as O.B.L. Kapoor. And why,
Same with Dr. Sanyal, Professor Sanyal.
Another.
His initiated name was Narayan Das, but you never hear that. You always hear Professor Nishikant Sanyal. You never hear.
And part of that may have been that people like O.B.L. Kapoor, he had a PhD, and his PhD thesis was the Vedanta Sutra commentary of Shankaracharya. That's what he wrote his thesis on.
Right.
And Professor Sanyal was a professor at, I believe it was Cuttack University. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Ravenshaw College. Yeah.
Yeah. And he was, I'm not sure about this. Sanskrit was his department. I'm not sure.
Not too sure. I don't know.
But they were professors, so one might consider, oh yes, because they have such a dignified position in the society, they will continue to be known as Professor so-and-so and what have you. And this, in the general eye of the public, brings some dignity to the mission of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But you can't apply the same logic to Srila Prabhupada in his Grihastha life, because he was just running a pharmaceutical business. And there's a pharmacy every block in India. That's nothing rare or outstanding. It's just, a respectable position. And his name, Abhay Charan Day, certainly doesn't designate that in any way. So we'll never know. But anyway, it's interesting to observe some of these peculiarities. All right, so moving on. Later, Srila Prabhupada, well, many of us thought for the longest time, Prabhupada, in 1959, he received sannyas, and he received the sannyas title Bhaktivedanta. Well, that's not exactly accurate. He did take sannyas in 1959, and he did. He was then known, and then he received the name Swami, and he became known as Bhaktivedanta Swami. Now, there's several things at play here. One is that Prabhupada kept his initials, AC. Now, I also asked you to do some research because I couldn't think of any, and I know the names of quite a few of Bhaktisiddhanta's sannyas disciples. Of his sannyas disciples, I believe I only ever met one personally, and that was Sridhar Maharaj, who was a direct sannyas disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. Excuse me, Srila Puri Maharaj, was not. I never met Yajabar Maharaj. He was, and I believe he was the last
one, yeah.
initiated disciple of Bhaktisiddhanta. So, but I'd heard the names of many of the people who were disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta and who took sannyas later, or who were so. But did any of these, or have you? Is there anybody else keeping their initials of their initiated name?
No, I never came across anybody. We couldn't. We did some research. We couldn't find anyone. Prabhupada was unique in that regard.
Yeah, so that's very unique. So again, we will never know necessarily. We can speculate on that if we want, but we will never know for sure why. I mean, it's obvious, and I would say in one sense, it has to do with the heart connection and the affection and the love for his guru and so many things. But Prabhupada never really mentioned that. Okay. So then, so now Bhaktivedanta. Well, it just so happens that Srila Prabhupada became Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, and I believe it was 1943.
1939, Guru Maharaj.
39. Okay. Why do I keep thinking 43? Anyway, 1939, he was, at that time, I don't even think he had started his Vanaprastha life. Could you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear.
I don't think he had even started Vanaprastha life.
No, I don't think so.
That didn't come about until 1953.
Yeah.
He began his Vanaprastha life. So 1939, Abhay Charan Arvinda Das becomes Bhaktivedanta Prabhu. Now, that in itself is a story, but uniquely, before becoming Bhaktivedanta, he became named Bhaktisiddhanta. So I first came about to know about this, not from hearing from anybody or anything, but in I think it was 1986, I was staying in Los Angeles community for a couple of months, and I was spending most every day in the BBT archives. And in that time, they had I think a bigger room. Anyway, they had this little room off to the side, and it was just stuffed full of filing cabinets. And I would pull a chair in there and just go through these filing cabinets. And I tell you, I was back in there every day because it was totally amazing. The things, for example, Prabhupada writes a letter to someone, and that's in the folio. But you don't get to see the letter that he's responding to, you see. And in many cases, some of these critical letters that he wrote, or peculiar letters that he wrote, begin to make a lot more sense when you see the letter that was written to him. In other words, in the folio, you get a one-sided conversation. You don't hear what was asked or what was said that he's correcting or whatever.
Right.
I was very surprised one day to find a letter in there where someone wrote to Prabhupada. I forget the names. This person wrote Prabhupada and asked if he could have an operation and become a woman. And I thought, oh, holy moly, man. Wow. This was back in, what year was it? It was early. I don't know the year. I think it was in the 70s, early 70s, 1970s. I thought, wow, I wonder what the response is going to be to this, because, me, I'm a total homophobic. I don't, anyway, that's another subject. But I thought, okay, well, Prabhupada's really going to give this person the sauce. And then I read the Prabhupada's reply, and I was again shocked. And basically, I will summarize. Prabhupada said, As regards to your request, he said, make a choice and stick with it. But this jumping back and forth is not good.
Mm-hmm.
So it was a classic Prabhupada response. Anyway, so I found many interesting things in there. I'll just, one small other footnote. I found an interesting note. Well, I saw this on many, many letters. The letter that was written to Prabhupada, I'm not talking, they're not copies. The actual letters were in files, you see.
Mm.
And then they were stapled together. They reply. So what I saw repeatedly is in the margins or on the back of the letter that was written to Prabhupada, there would be handwritten notes by the secretary who's reading the letter to Prabhupada and then receiving a dictation about how to reply or what to say. They're just little short, it wasn't written in shorthand, but it was just shortly jotted down notes. You get my point? You get the picture?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that was on so many letters and so many letters of no specific interest. But one of them, when I flipped over, I saw a footnote and it caught my eye. And it was a description written down by the secretary, noting in a shorthand, meaning in short words, Prabhupada's instruction to be given to all the devotees on how to make a bona fide Gaudiya Sampradaya Brahman's thread. Now, just grab any devotee in the Western Hare Krishna movement, particularly in the line of Prabhupada and ISKCON, and say, how many strings in your thread, Prabhu? And they'll all say 6. Look at their thread, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And that's mainly because they just buy them in big bundles in Loy Bazaar in Vrindavan.
Right.
And there's practically not 1 in 1,000 devotees in the world that knows how to make a Brahman's thread. Well, as it turns out, the Brahman's thread for a Gaudiya Vaishnava is not 6 strings. It's 9 strings. And Prabhupada, and the footnote says, it says, instruct devotees, Brahman's thread making 3 sets 3 is the footnote. So then I went looking, well, where's the letter where actually that got, communicated to the devotees? I haven't looked forever, but I never did come up with a letter where that instruction was passed on. It's a minor thing, how many strings in a Brahman's thread. But it also corresponds to the 9 processes of devotional service, the 9 processes of
9 islands.
9 islands in Navadvip, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's an insignificant thing, but it bears some significant meaning. Mm-hmm. So just like somebody says, what is that on your face? What does it mean? You see, people ask, where does it mean? Where does it come from? Again, the tilak, many devotees, someone asks, well, what is that? Well, it's clay from the Ganges. I mean, I've heard this 1,001 times, but I think that it's been out there for some time that, no, it's not clay from the Ganges. It's clay from a lake in Dwarka called Gopi Taval. Mm-hmm. So anyway, what does it matter? Well, I guess if you want to go down one road, nothing matters, Or you might want to understand where our tradition came from and some of the details. Anyway, that was just a little footnote about that. All right. So now getting to the point, then I came upon official original papers of the registration of the League of Devotees. Now, League of Devotees, I believe, 1953?
Yeah, it's something like that, I think, yeah.
Well, 1953. So I came upon this. I said, this is really interesting. And I started reading this about, the registration papers of the League of Devotees, what it's all for. And I'm reading along, and there's a few scratched out things and a few whatnot, marks, and something written in the column also on the side, in the borders. And all of a sudden, I look there, and I kind of squint, and I go, what am I reading here? Abhaycharanaravinda, it says alias Abhaycharanaravinda, Bhaktivedanta Das Adhikari. And then I looked and I went, it doesn't say Bhaktivedanta at all. It says alias Abhaycharanaravinda, Bhakti Siddhanta Das Adhikari. And I went, what? Prabhupada's alias Bhakti Siddhanta Das? And then again, in the same document on one or two of the back sides, there's a little footnote. And again, in Prabhupada's own handwriting, it says alias Abhaycharanaravinda Bhakti Siddhanta Das Adhikari. So now I've asked you to print that out. We have copies of that, of course. I made copies of that from that very day back in 1986. So I want to hold that up on the screen somehow so devotees can see that. Okay, whoa. Move it to the one way. No, the other way. You see a little X there. Okay. Now, above that it says Mr. Okay, move it over so we can start to read it. Stop there. It says Mr. Abhaycharan Day, and the little X, and above that it says alias Abhaycharanara Brinda. Move it over more. Little more. Okay, stop there. Bhakti Siddhanta Das, and move it over to the rest of the way, Adhikari. I almost fell out of my chair. Okay, that's good. So on that document, it's either 2 or 3 places. I don't have the document here with me in Mexico, but in our archives in India, I have the document, a copy of that document. So 2 or 3 times, I don't remember, that is written there. So it so happens, so after that I did research. It took quite a long time to put the whole story together. That Prabhupada was writing articles in a Bengali magazine for Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj was the second disciple of Bhakti Siddhanta to go to England to try and establish the mission of Lord Chaitanya in England. And he was in England at the time of Bhaktisiddhanta's disappearance. So later, that's another story. Maybe sometime we'll talk about this great personality, Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. But he was he was in the family of what they claim to be the family lineage, the family, actual family, or I don't know how that all works, but the Parivar of Sri Nityananda Prabhu. Is that correct, Gary?
Yep.
Sri Nityananda. So he was a very much elevated person in the society, the Society of Bengal at the time, a very high caste Brahmin family, etc. And he later received sannyas, I believe, from Srila Sridhar Maharaj?
Yes, his first sannyasi disciple.
Sridhar Maharaj's first sannyasi disciple was his godbrother, Bhakti Saranga Goswami. So at a time, I know that Prabhupada wrote 25 articles, because in 1978, one of the Gurukul teachers in Vrindavan was translating those articles. And so he had written many articles, and they're all being signed Abhaycharan Day. So I don't know all the detail of it, but Saranga Goswami was so impressed with Prabhupada's preaching, with his articles, with his scholarship, if you will, that he conferred upon him the name Bhakti Siddhanta Das. There Prabhupada writes Das. You see? It's like, oh my God, he changed his name. For devotees out there that are sometimes so weirded out that how could your name change? How could your name change? There's so many devotees of names have changed. Well, look at that. Now just take a look at that. Prabhupada's not accepting sannyas. He's not even vanaprastha yet. But here is a godbrother changing his name. Now, Prabhupada accepts that. If he didn't accept it, then he would have never been an alias. And it certainly wouldn't have to be written on the registration papers of the League of Devotees in 1953. So, Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj changed Prabhupada's name from Abhaycharan Aravinda to Bhaktisiddhanta Das. Whoa. All right. So then how does he become a Bhaktivedanta? Well, this didn't exactly, I guess what we'd say in modern terms, this didn't exactly go down so smooth. That here is Abhay Babu. Now suddenly he's Bhaktisiddhanta Das, servant of Bhaktisiddhanta. However, there had been a tradition that devotees felt at that time, devotees meaning the godbrothers of Prabhupada, that should be maintained. And that tradition is this, that Bhaktisiddhanta never gave the name of Bhaktivinod to anyone. He never gave the name of Gorkashore to anyone. As far as we know, he didn't give the name of Jagannath Das Babaji to anyone. So there's this tradition, and it's not just there in Gaudiya, but sometimes there's a tradition of there's a great personality, his name is such and such, nobody else should have that name. But there's also the tradition of to name multiple people after a great personality. Particularly, you find this in the Ramanujas, because if you ever get a letter from a sannyasi in the Ramanuja Sampradaya, he has his own name and title, he signs it Ramanuja.
Actually, everybody that takes initiation, at the time of their initiation, they all become Ramanuja Das.
But they have another sannyas title though, like what is the Jir, the young one that's always
Chinajir.
Chinajir. They're called Jirs, Chinajir. Yeah. So I don't know so much about all their names, but they do take names from the Dasanomi of Shankar also, from the first 10 names. We'll get into that. That's another subject, how the names for sannyasis are chosen. Well, it turns out that not in a rude way, but in a very gentlemanly way, because we're talking about gentlemen. Sridhar Maharaj and Prabhupada's associates, Bhakti Daitya Madhav Maharaj and Damodar Maharaj and Yajavar Maharaj, and all these people, they're quite the gentlemanly class of people, devotees. So, there was not much is said about it, but they thought, well, it's not so, appropriate. Maybe some adjustment can be given. And apparently there was a meeting. And at this meeting, Srila Sridhar Maharaj suggested that, well, we cannot overlook this because Saranga Maharaj, his status is quite respectable. And everyone was in agreement that Abhay Babu is being selected. He's being singled out that by Bhaktisiddhanta. This is coming through Saranga Maharaj, that this is a devotee of distinction, and that distinction should be recognized, and by giving him this title, certainly, or this name, certainly this is showing some distinction, correct? So, Sridhar Maharaj suggested, now, bear in mind, Sridhar Maharaj is the person who then suggested yet another change from Abhaycharan Aravinda to Bhaktisiddhanta Das, and then Sridhar Maharaj suggested the name Bhaktivedanta. And the reason is this, that Bhaktisiddhanta, the Siddhanta of Bhakti, Bhaktisiddhanta. Bhaktisiddhanta means the Siddhanta of Bhakti. And the name suggested by Sridhar Maharaj, Bhakti Vedanta, Vedanta, the Bhakti of Vedanta, Bhakti Vedanta. Siddhanta and Vedanta, the Bhakti Vedanta and the Bhakti Siddhanta, they are the same in meaning. So, Sridhar Maharaj suggested this name Bhaktivedanta, and everybody was in agreement. Satsvarup Maharaj writes in his biographical book of Prabhupada's life called the Lilamrita. He just makes, he says that Prabhupada said that he was given this title Bhaktivedanta by the Vaishnava community. He did not go into detail. It took some research and inquiring from others how this all came about. Now, that might sound to people like, oh yeah, okay, this is good. This name, that name, that's okay. But I'd like to rather think of it that we're not just talking about, some people off the street getting together and making some arbitrary decisions. These were deep thinking and highly elevated souls. And I think it was a very special event. And to sort of like give evidence that this was a special event, that Keshav Maharaj was also present in that meeting. And Keshav Maharaj, he must have been impressed by many aspects of this meeting, and not but least that Bhaktivedanta means the same thing as Bhaktisiddhanta. Because going forward from that day, not prior, but going forward from that day, anyone who received sannyas from Keshav Maharaj received the name of Bhaktivedanta. And that tradition in the, what's the name of their mutt?
Gaudiya Vaishnava Samiti, in a Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti.
In the Gaudiya Vedanta Samiti, that tradition continues to the present day. And Prabhupada also, I think, was very impressed with this. And he requested in a letter, we didn't dig up that letter, but devotees are familiar with this, and if not, look in the folio. He requested in a letter that in future there would be some standards of different examinations and titles given, Bhakti Shastri, Bhakti, this, that, or the other. And the highest title being a Bhaktivedanta, and anybody who held this title, Bhaktivedanta, could initiate.
Right.
But this is just one of the many things, be it the 9 threads of the 9 strings of the Brahman thread, or the Bhaktivedantas can initiate. There are many such things directed by His divine grace that never happen. And that includes, we're going to get around to it, the book changes. Prabhupada left specific, detailed instructions not to change anything except a possible comma or a capital letter, but change nothing regarding the sentences, nothing regarding the philosophy. Yet, no one has paid attention to this, and the worst of worst has happened. There's over 7,000 changes been made in Srila Prabhupada's book. So just another example of things that never happen. But Prabhupada says those with the status of Bhaktivedanta, they will initiate. So one might immediately think, oh yes, they're giving his name, you see. But you have to think of Srila Prabhupada in relation to his guru. What do you think of? What do you do? How do you act as a disciple? Independent, you may be a sannyasi, you may be a guru, you may be a temple president, you may just be a Sankirtan devotee, and you're out there and you are acting, and how are you doing everything in relation to your guru? So I don't think that he's just saying, yes, they will be Bhaktivedantas, and who are Bhaktivedantas, they can initiate, and that's my name. But it certainly is his name. But it certainly is the name of, by this time, maybe 100 other sannyasis in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. I could rattle off about 20 of them.
True. That letter from 1969, Guru Maharaj, from Prabhupada about the title Bhaktivedanta. Yeah.
Right. Well, we're going to read that whole letter. So anyway, just want to give this background. Now, somebody once, I heard them say, yes, when Prabhupada was initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta, he received the name Bhaktivedanta. And I was like, what? What did he just say? So I think it's important. I mean, it's been a thing in history. If you don't know your history, you don't know your present. You don't know where you came from. You don't know where you are. These things are, I would say, important. All right. So this name Bhaktivedanta is synonymous with Bhaktisiddhanta. And so Prabhupada accepted that and became a Bhaktivedanta. Your reference says 1939.
Yes.
That's quite amazing, 1939. So Prabhupada did not accept sannyas until 20 years later in 1959. Now, I'll just give one reference. Everybody knows the name of Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, who was a disciple of Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. And it so happens that Narayan Maharaj, that we refer to as Narayan Maharaj, he took sannyas before Prabhupada, not after. He took before 1959. I don't know the exact year, maybe 1956 or something. I don't know. Maybe even earlier. I don't know. I know some story I'll tell sometime about how Prabhupada opened a spice shop in Holy Gate in Mathura. And Narayan Maharaj, when he was a brahmachari, was assigned to work in the store with Prabhupada, but that didn't work out because it just didn't work out. Anyway, it's a very nice story. So he was a Bhaktivedanta. And also, everybody's familiar with that picture of Prabhupada on his sannyas day standing, and Keshav Maharaj is sitting in a chair, and there's another gentleman standing on the side who had also taken sannyas, and that's Muni Maharaj. His name is Bhaktivedanta Muni Maharaj. So Keshav Maharaj gave this title Bhaktivedanta to all his disciples, all his sannyas disciples, but it stems from our Prabhupada receiving the name Bhaktivedanta after an adjustment was made to the name Bhaktisiddhanta, which was given to him. So it's very interesting history, and it also, if you pay attention to it, it also tells you something about the nature of the dealings between Srila Prabhupada and his circle of God brothers that he was very intimate with. All right, so then moving on to the next is Swami. We have AC for Abhay Charanaravinda, Bhaktivedanta, an adjustment to the name Bhaktisiddhanta, and then Swami. All right, so I wanted to give some clarification to this Swami, Bhaktivedanta Swami. Well, as it turns out, Bhaktivedanta is not the name. It may have been used as his name when he became Bhaktivedanta Prabhu in 1939, and for 20 years, that was his name. He was referred to as Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu, Bhaktivedanta Prabhu. However, when he took sannyas, that which was previously his name now became his title. Bhaktivedanta is his title. It's not a name. And Swami, when we look at that, we think, oh, he's a sannyasi. Sannyasis are swamis. So this is also like a, what would you call that? Like a brahmachari. Like if you say Hridayananda Das Brahmachari or somebody's name, Adi Keshava Das Brahmachari, that's his status in the
his ashram status.
Ashram status, in the varnashram status. So people think, oh, Swami, because he's Swami. But that's not what it is. Now, I just want to halt here for a minute and think about this for a minute. You say, and you look in any Gaudiya literature and you'll see, I mean, even it took some people who have been with me for over 20 years to finally realize that I'm not Nrsimha Swami. I'm Swami Narasimha, or Narasimha, however you like to say it. Swami goes first. It's Swami B.R. Sridhar. It's Swami B.P. Puri. It's Swami so-and-so, so. It's Swami first, It's even Swami Vivekananda. It's not Vivekananda Swami. It's Swami Vivekananda, because in the Bengal tradition, of which the Gaudiya is in the Bengal tradition, the sannyas designation as Swami appears at the beginning of your name, not at the end of your name. So then the question is, well, what is that Swami at the end of Prabhupada's name? And why doesn't he say Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami? What's going on here? All right. So now, please read Srila Prabhupada's letter in 1968, where he explains in his own words to his disciple Rai Ram about what is this Swami, and he explains that this Swami at the end of my name is not my is not my title, it's my name. My name is Swami Maharaj. And he explains that. And then we'll turn to, after you read that letter, we'll turn to a little description here about and from the Gaudiya Kantahar, which is I'll explain some history of this book, in which the 108 names for the Gaudiya Vaishnava sannyasis under the line of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, this is where all of their names come from. And we'll get into that. So first, please read that letter where Srila Prabhupada explains this in his own words, and then we'll reiterate a little.
So far the title Swami is concerned, although this word is used generally for sannyasis, this Swami is my particular name as a sannyasi. Therefore, it must be suffixed at the end of my real name, A.C. Bhaktivedanta. So far the prefix Swami is concerned, every sannyasi has got to do that. But two ways Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami is not good looking. The end Swami is necessary because it is my sannyas name. The first Swami may be transformed into Goswami, which is on the same order of Swami. Therefore, I use the prefix Tridandi Goswami and the suffix Swami as I have printed on my card enclosed herewith. That will be nice. In small lettering, it can be written above my name, Tridandi Goswami. Vaishnava sannyasis are known as Tridandi Goswamis, and Mayavadi sannyasis are known as only Swami.
I want to show that letterhead. We don't have the card, although we do have that in our archive.
The card is on the, later we can post the URL for the article about this, and the card is mentioned, it's shown in the URL there.
Yeah.
But here's the letterhead. If you can see that.
No, back it off some. You're too close. You can see that. Tridandi Goswami, then A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. Now, Prabhupada never signed any letter, never had a card, never made a letterhead where he included the further suffix of Prabhupada. At any time, ever, never, nada, zip, zero, zilch, never. He never included that in his own name and never called himself Prabhupada. Now, there's a very important point coming up here on the last part of Prabhupada's name and title. So Prabhupada says, my name, A.C. Bhaktivedanta. Yes, it's also name, but it's actually more in the line of a title. But anyway, let's not pick straws on that. So Prabhupada has made it very clear that his name is Swami. That is his sannyas name. Just like someone will say, oh, I went to Sridhar Maharaj's Mat. Oh, I went to Keshav Maharaj's Samadhi. Oh, I went to Narayan Maharaj's Mat. All these names, Narayan, Keshava, Vishnu, Bodhayan, Trivikram, Govinda, Madhusudana, Swami. There's so many Swamis, and these are their names. And then there's Swami Maharaj. And then there's also Goswami Maharaj. Bhakti Saranga is his title, and Goswami is his name. The man, the Vaishnava, the gentleman who gave Prabhupada first the name Bhaktisiddhanta Das, changing his name, gave him the name Bhaktisiddhanta Das. His name is Goswami Maharaj. So when you're close or in uptight or a knowledgeable visitor to the Gaudiya Math, and you ask somebody, oh, who is your guru? And they say, oh, I'm a disciple of Goswami Maharaj. Well, that means Bhakti Saranga Goswami Maharaj. However, in Gaudiya Math, you'll never get the short. If you ask somebody, who is your guru, you get folded hands, Jayom Vishnupad Paramhansa Shri Shri, and you get the guru's full-fledged title, name, everything. Now, they are not cavaliering about the name of their guru. So all the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta have a sannyas name, and that name, and all the grand disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta, in all the missions that there are of the Gaudiya Sampradaya, except ISKCON, have a name which is taken from this book called Sri Gaudiya Kantahar, the necklace of Vaishnava verses. So basically, in a word, this is the preacher's handbook. This is the sloka book for the Gaudiya preachers. This book was compiled. These slokas for preaching were compiled by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta and his disciples under the management, under the direction of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. And the book is divided into tattvas, and in the, it's called the Ashram Dharma Tattva, as 15, it's the 15th chapter, and, 15th chapter, the 40th verse. So I'm not going to read all this, but here are 108 names for the Tridandi sannyasis. It says the 108 names of the Tridandi sannyasis. So I might note that the first 10 is called the Dasanami, the 10 names. And these are the same names as given to acharyas, sannyasis in the line of Shankaracharya. The Dasanomi or Nami, I forget how you
Nami, yeah.
The Dasanami, the 10 names. And if I'm not mistaken, the Sri Vaishnavas also use the Dasanami. I'm not...
Sri Vaishnavas don't use. Madhvas only use Tirtha. They use one of the names. But Sri Vaishnavas don't use.
All right. So in compiling what will be... They have to understand that we always refer to, or devotees in the West refer to, Prabhupada's movement, Prabhupada's movement, Prabhupada's movement. Well, he did establish, first the League of Devotees, that's another story, but then the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, but everything that we do within that institution, and those who are followers and disciples of Prabhupada who are outside the institution, everything we do, the way we do worship, how we do worship, the books that we put forward first, everything, Ed to Z, that we do is established by Bhaktisiddhanta, not by Srila Prabhupada. It's established by Bhaktisiddhanta. In fact, there are early letters where Prabhupada writes to his disciples saying, actually, this is Bhaktisiddhanta's movement.
He is sending you all.
He is sending you all. And we all understand that. He sent Prabhupada our Prabhupada to the West. Anyway, another topic. Actually, this is Lord Chaitanya's movement above all, but it's Bhaktisiddhanta who established everything. The color we wear as sannyasis, the danda we carry, what it's made of, how it's made, how it's tied together, every aspect of it, the names, the process of initiation, Harinam, then mantra diksha, the deities we worship, how we worship the deities. Everything is established by Bhaktisiddhanta. Prabhupada, our Guru Maharaj, once remarked he has only added one addition, and that is, as a sannyasi, he performed the marriage ritual for grihastas. He said, that's the only thing. The only thing I have added, or I have implemented here, I'm not implemented, but added, is this. Everything else is done by Bhaktisiddhanta. He is the one who has formed everything about our sampradaya. So here is 108 names, and down here on line 19, I don't see if we can see that for our readers. I put a little line under it. That line begins with Vishnu, Damodar, Swami, Goswami, etc. So there are the two names of Swami and Goswami. And way up here, I'll put my finger up here next to it, right there, is the name Tridundi. So somebody would not be, for example, if Prabhupada had been given the name of Tridundi, he wouldn't write Tridundi Goswami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Tridundi. So he says 2 times Swami doesn't look good. But the suffix Swami, it must be there because it's my name. All right, so we'll just, before we go on to Prabhupada, let us just explore a couple things in relation to how Prabhupada himself gave sannyas to his disciples. I think Srila Prabhupada had how many sannyasi disciples, Giri?
I think we counted 57, including 2 Babajis.
Which makes it 2 Babajis, 57 sannyasis. All right, so Srila Prabhupada did not follow this particular system, which was given by Bhaktisiddhanta. He didn't follow that system. And in our own community, devotees have asked me why, and I'll just say, when you read through this list, there's many names that you can't even pronounce. This is very difficult. That's a practical point. The other point was that I said that Prabhupada just made it simple. He had more important things to accomplish than just name-giving tradition. It is tradition, name-giving tradition. It's not unimportant, but it is not quintessentially important. Anyway, we never know. He never really said why he didn't, but we do know what system he did follow, and that was when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu accepted sannyas, we find out that he kept his brahmachari name, which was Chaitanya. And Kesava Bharati added Krishna to the front of it, Krishna Chaitanya. And again, this is not in the Dasanami of Shankara. Kesava Bharati was a Mayavad sannyasi in the school of Bharatis from the Dasanami. But the whole affair at Katwa was way beyond just some ritual activity. It was one mega ecstatic event taking place over 3 days. And the mantra that Mahaprabhu received, I think that would be an interesting conversation to have for devotees. What mantra he received when taking sannyas, because sannyasis, we all receive the special mantras at the time of sannyas. So what mantras did Mahaprabhu receive? Turns out very different than the mantras we receive today. And all that, how it all came to be that actually Mahaprabhu didn't take sannyas from a Mayavadi, he took sannyas from a Vaishnava. He was a Mayavadi until Mahaprabhu whispered anyway, it's a long story, but he converted on the spot Kesava Bharati, within a whisper into a Vaishnava. And then he accepted the mantra. The details are a fascinating story and Leela, actually. So, where were we now in the talk?
We were talking about why Prabhupada gave them the names that he did to his sannyasis.
Yes, so he followed that system. The only little thing that seems to be, for example, Hridayananda Maharaj was a Grihasta, and Satsvarup Maharaj was a Grihasta, to name 2. And they became Goswamis. It's Satsvarup Das Goswami, or Hridayananda Das Goswami. They became Goswamis. But others, like myself and so many, Jayapataka, and so many others, that was their brahmachari name. They became Swami. So Prabhupada adopted that system, that brahmacharis became Swamis, and Grihastas became Goswamis. And
towards the end of Prabhupada's...
yes, towards the end of his life, he, in the last few months, he gave sannyas to Bhakti Prem Yogi, Bhakti Charu Swami, and he began to change their names, but he didn't just adhere exactly to this 100 names. Bhakti Charu was was he Charu Brahmachari, or what was his
No,
name?
he was Kshirachora Gopinath Das
Right,
before.
I forgot that, yeah.
Right.
So he began to change their names, but not exactly as the Gaudiya Kantahar is that. For example, just Bhakti Charu Swami would not be, that is and it isn't. You know, but then most people take that Swami at the end of the names of Prabhupada's sannyas disciples as being their status, their varnashram status. But actually, in the Gaudiya tradition, the status name goes at the beginning. So you're a Swami. They're all Swamis. And then their name goes at the end, but the confusing point comes that three of these names, one of them being Swami, the other Goswami, and the other Tridandi, these are also used as prefixes to identify their varnashram. So it's confusing. But I think what you read in Prabhupada's letter clarifies that his name is Swami. Now, here, therefore, if you are saying, someone says, so-and-so, he was over at Sridhar Maharaj's ashram, or this or that, that's perfectly fine. But when the unattuned ear hears, oh, you're a disciple of Swami Maharaj, for some reason, and I kind of know what that reason is, devotees feel they're being disrespectful to Prabhupada just calling him a Swami. But that's not the case. They're simply calling him his name. He is so. What we don't call it. Actually, the tradition is you're not supposed to call your guru by his name. Therefore, we don't call Srila Prabhupada Swami Maharaj. And disciples of Sridhar Maharaj don't really call him, Sridhar Maharaj, although it's not like a hard and fast rule, but, one should address his guru with all formality and all this. But really, if you're living 20 years in the same house with your guru, that might get a little bit kind of too formal. So, anyway.
At least Guru Maharaj.
Yeah, they usually call him Guru Maharaj. They don't call him by his name. You don't, in the Gaudiya Math, you don't find somebody going in the room, paying their obeisances to their guru, and then going, Narayan Maharaj, that is his name, Bhaktivedanta Narayan, but they don't call him. They call him Guru Maharaj or Guru Dev or such suffixes, right?
Titles. Yeah.
These kind of titles. So there's some tradition to be followed, and it's based on etiquette, which is based on respect, and which is also based on affection and all these things. So devotees should not feel that people are being, disrespectful and saying, oh yeah, Swami Maharaj went to New York. That's his name. Just like you may say Sridhar Maharaj or Puri Maharaj or something. But the disciples don't call their guru by their name. It's just like in India, the tradition in North India, a husband doesn't call his wife by her name. And a wife doesn't call her husband by his name. In English, they say wife. And they'll say, dear husband, your dinner is served. Husband.
Swami.
Husband. Swami in South India means husband. Swami, your dinner is ready. They don't call them by their name. This is culture. This is tradition. But here in the West, actually, my life experience is we don't even know what culture is. Really, there is no culture. Prabhupada said Asia has culture, India has culture, Europe has some culture. In the United States, it doesn't have any culture. So, anyway, so there you have AC, Bhaktivedanta, Swami. Now, Prabhupada. This has got its own history. So it turns out that for the first 2 years of Prabhupada's preaching in the West, he was known by his disciples as Swamiji. he used to go to this ashram with the devotees up in upstate New York. That was, what was his name? Mishra something?
Dr. Mishra. Dr. Mishra.
Dr. Mishra. And there they referred to Mishra as Guruji. So Prabhupada is Swami, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami. He's in the West. He's preaching 26 Second Avenue and what have you. All that is going on. And I don't know when it started, but devotees started referring to Prabhupada as Swamiji. And with all their heart and great respect, and they were surrendering to Swamiji, and so affectionate, and writing letters, "Dear Swamiji." And I can't help but think, although there's no particular reference, I mean, maybe some oldest devotees of the movement know, like Jadharani, or maybe Guru Das, or somebody knows who was there in those days in 26th Second Avenue, or Mukunda. Maybe they know when and exactly why they said Swamiji. But in my thinking, well, they were up there and possibly there was an influence. But Ji is a respected term, Swamiji. In India, it's kind of like street respect, actually. It's not high regard between disciple and guru, to call the guru Guruji. So somehow, now again, it's just probably more tradition than anything, but in the public, all the Swamis, we are all Swamijis, and if they're not initiated disciples, and they will come to your ashram and a darshan, and they'll say, Guruji. Oh, Guruji, I have a question. Oh, Swamiji, and they, from their position, are offering great respect. But that same thing, same word, between disciple to guru, it's not considered respectful. It's actually considered disrespectful. So my conclusion is that this G, Swamiji, Guruji, is kind of like street respect. All right, so they called Prabhupada Swamiji. Now, we have some references from Satsvarup Das Goswami's Lilamrita, where he explains, and in what year, how it is that A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami and Swamiji began to be called and addressed as Prabhupada. So, do you have that, Giri? You have that?
Yeah, I have two references. One was from Prabhupada Nectar, which was a reference from Govinda Dasi, and one was from the Lilamrita.
Right. So first read the one from the Lilamrita, and because the one from Govinda Dasi, the next day is like a follow-up. And after Govinda Dasi, it's final. Yeah.
It was only after 2 years of leading ISKCON in America that Srila Prabhupada agreed to be addressed by the proper title Prabhupada instead of Swamiji. As early as 1960, in his first volume of Srimad Bhagavatam, he had written a purport, quote, "The pure devotees whose only business is serving are honored by the names Prabhupada and Vishnupad, which indicates such devotees to be representatives of the lotus feet of the Lord." End quote. Yet although the address Swamiji is common and not very respectful, it was the only name his followers knew, and it had become a most endearing term for them. They inquired and prayed to him by that name, and they addressed all their letters, "Dear Swamiji." So, it was a bit of a shock when the name was changed. One devotee, on hearing the new name from Srila Prabhupada's secretary, couldn't accept it without personally asking Srila Prabhupada. On the next morning walk, they inquired, "Swamiji?" "Yes," Prabhupada replied. "I understand that you prefer to be called Prabhupada." Prabhupada turned quickly. "Where did you hear this? Who told you this?" Prabhupada appeared annoyed, and then he became silent. But after a few moments he spoke again. "Actually, I do not prefer, but it is better."
Now, did I miss something there? Who brought this up to begin? Does Prabhupada, does Satsvarup mention who brought this up at all?
He doesn't mention it, but then when I looked in the Prabhupada Nectar book, it was Govinda Dasi that brought it up. She was the one that asked Srila Prabhupada.
No, she asked initially, or she's the one that asked, you prefer?
She was the one that brought it up initially.
Okay, go ahead. Do you have that from her memoirs?
She says, in May 1968, while in Boston, Prabhupada had been dictating a letter and mentioned to his secretary that Swamiji was a third-class title for the spiritual master. Then why do we call you Swamiji? His secretary asked. The spiritual master, Prabhupada replied, is usually addressed by names like Gurudev, Vishnupad, or Prabhupada. May we call you Prabhupada? His secretary asked. Prabhupada replied, yes, and his disciples had switched from Swamiji to Prabhupada.
See, so that the thing you read from the Lilamrita, that happens after first. Then it was told to the devotees. And then who was it that asked the question and said, oh, you prefer Prabhupada?
That was Govinda Dasi.
That was Govinda Dasi. Yeah. All right. So it was there in the second thing that you just read, where Prabhupada is explaining in a letter that Swamiji is a second-class way of third class, not second class, third class way of addressing one's guru. And then the secretary asked, well, what should we call you? Well, Gurudev, Guru Maharaj, Vishnupad, or Prabhupada? Oh, Prabhupada. Oh, Swamiji, can we call you Prabhupada? Yes. So he allowed that, and because that is more preferable. So then the next day, Govinda Dasi is saying, she's basically saying, so is it true you prefer to be called Prabhupada, right? And it's not his preference. It's not a preference. This is a subtle point in Guru Tattva. It's all about the pratishtha that the guru is duty bound to accept. It's like when you go on stage and the curtain's open, well, dance. Otherwise, don't get on stage. Bhaktisiddhanta is a beautiful lecture, and he says, should I run from the chair? You see, I'm being, all these bombastic glorifications. Should I run from the chair? No, the guru represents Krishna, and it's the guru's duty to accept certain pratishtas. Of course, that can get out of hand, and we have seen so much of that, and much of that still persists today. Just outrageous pratishtas, but there's no deliverance. There's just more and more pratishta. Anyway, that's a separate subject. But so when the disciple is saying, oh, you prefer? And Prabhupada is annoyed by that. No, he does not prefer, but it is proper. You see, it is his position. He's taken the position. Krishna has put him in the position to be guru for all these young boys and girls, and it is his responsibility that they deal with Krishna's representative properly. Now, had there been somebody else there to direct everybody, then he wouldn't have had to bear some of these incidences himself, you see. But that we covered that. If somebody else would have come as he invited them, then he would have been directing them how to honor Tirtha Maharaj as the guru. And he wouldn't have been their guru. So it would have been a whole different story if those God brothers had accepted his invitation. So in one sense, disciples should feel, and grand disciples should feel respect for them that they didn't, and see that it is Krishna's arrangement. That yes, he wanted help, but Krishna wanted him to be the man, wanted him to receive all the glory. He wanted his devotee to take that, to take the mission, to take the glory, everything personally. Another thing, just to flash back on here, when Prabhupada received the first elaborate Vyasasan that was something more than a cushion, that was in Los Angeles. A gorgeous little throne for a king was made, all velvet and gold jari trim and everything. And it was in the temple room for Prabhupada, and when he walked in and saw that seat, there, I think there's a recount of this in the Lilamrita also, Prabhupada, with tears in his eyes, he became very emotional, and he requested the devotees with folded hands that going forward, please be humble. Another little example for the acharyas to reflect back on. A little bit of humility, please. So, Srila Prabhupada became then addressed by his disciples as Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when the devotees went to India, I don't know what is the year, it was quite early on. They put up the banners at Mayapur, which is the homeland of the Gaudiya Sampradaya and the disciples of Bhaktisiddhanta and the mother temples of Bhaktisiddhanta established by him personally. And they put up the sign, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And this was a bombshell. And Srila Prabhupada even commented that this is a bombshell for my godbrothers, right?
In fact, the day after, or 2 days after this conversation happened that I just read, then Prabhupada flew to Los Angeles, and the news had got there, I think it was Los Angeles, and there was a big banner saying, "Welcome Srila Prabhupada," at the airport. And Prabhupada turned to one of his disciples and said, "I don't know what my godbrothers will think of this."
Yes. So, let me just pause for a second. Oh, I know what we'll think of it. They're envious of Prabhupada. You see? Can you imagine? Can you just frickin' imagine that someone like Radhanath Swami, all of a sudden they decide it's Radhanath Swami Prabhupada?
Mm-hmm.
Are the godbrothers going to accept that? Is ISKCON going to accept that? Is the GBC going to accept that? And the answer is no. They're not going to accept that. Is it because they're envious? Well, they will argue, no. But yet they will say, yes, they were envious of Prabhupada. Well, you know what? If the shoe fits, wear it. And I think the shoe fits really tight. They would flip double time over backwards. If any Prabhupada disciple or second generation person started calling himself Prabhupada, as Prabhupada. There is a Prabhupada Das. I think, was there two? Or one? There's
a number of them. Yeah.
There's at least one. There might have been two disciples of Prabhupada named Prabhupada Das, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's visible here is that disciples have certain sentiments, like the chair. Namana Samhita says that when the guru disappears, the disciple should take his chair and sit on it and take the position. That's how the succession was worked.
Right.
But due to affections and remembrances and things like this, in Gaudiya line, it seems to be a tradition since the Gaudiya Sampradaya took some shape in the modern world in the early 20th century, that the room of the guru is reserved and the seat of the guru is reserved and nobody else sits in it. And for what? Well, that's their sentiment. That's their feeling. So in some cases, the names are preserved, and reserved, and the seat or the room. Well, none of these things are absolutely, forged in steel. Well, they're based on the current of the times and the moods of the devotees and the example set by the previous acharya. So nowadays, say you have a temple, I don't know what systems they have, but no matter what system you have going forward, there'll be need of adjustment because time, place, and circumstances change. However, it's very faulty to use the time, place, circumstance argument to changing the books of Srila Prabhupada. This is called shifting the ground. This argument is not applicable there. Now, as regards certain things, so in the present generation, we regard things of Srila Prabhupada all over the world. They're kept very sacred. His shoes and his rooms and his seat and his chair, rocking chair, and so many things are kept. I believe there's a reference, but I know it's a fact, that Prabhupada said, as regards the clothes of the guru, you can wear, if you receive an article of clothing of your guru, you can wear it, everything except the shoes. You can't wear your guru's shoes. But I remember after the disappearance of Srila Prabhupada, Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave me one of Prabhupada's kurtas. Well, I knew that, yeah, I could wear this, but I never did.
Mm.
But then a little while later, someone gave me an Uttariya of Prabhupada, and that I used to wear. And I believe I gave that to Vishnu Maharaj, and he probably still has that, but he doesn't wear it. He keeps it as a sacred paraphernalia. So these are all sentiments and things, but where should we draw our sentiments from? Well, follow in the footsteps of the previous acharyas and try to learn. And in so doing, then when the time may arise, and it doesn't like have to arise, but the time for change of something or adjustment to something may have to be made, then you have something to base your what is right and what is wrong.
Mm.
In many of these cases, there are no hard and fast rules, you see. So nowadays, I know that in certain areas of the Hare Krishna movement, for example, the name Bhaktivedanta is given to all sannyasis, and many of them in the Western world, in the ashram of Bhaktivedanta Narayan Maharaj, coming from Bhakti Pragyan Keshav Maharaj. They're all Bhaktivedantas. In almost all that I know of, Bodhaya Maharaj's, Srila Puri Maharaj's mission, and all others, they followed this Gaudiya Kantahar, and the system of giving the titles and the names and everything is very much to this. There are 108 names, but there are more than 108 sannyasis out there, and then so there's replicas of the names, and therefore the other part, the Bhaktivedanta, that can be of Bhakti Saranga, Bhakti Pramod, Bhakti Pragyan, and that designates which Madha Maharaj you're talking about, or which Swami Maharaj, or Goswami, or Puri, or there's, for example, there is Bhakti Pramod Puri Maharaj. Then later there was Bhakti Vaibhav Puri Maharaj. So we say Puri Maharaj, and then you have to designate Vaibhav Puri Maharaj or Pramod Puri Maharaj, or there's so many others that I don't know. So the Gaudiya Math still follows these same 108 names, although they have more than 108 sannyasis. So you have doubles and triples and quadruples on the name, but they, not all, but they mostly have a different bhakti such and such, a Bhakti Vedanta, this, that, and the other. But none of
generally
them.
Generally, it's 4 syllables.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Bhakti, something with 4 syllables, and then the title. Yeah.
All right. So, keep that in the back of your mind when you read or say AC, AC Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So this has been an evolution, and Srila is yet again added as a prefix to the whole thing. I don't think anybody writes anymore Tridandi Goswami. That was Prabhupada's personal letterhead. It's always now His Divine Grace, which is what? It's very Catholic, actually. That's the Western edition, His Divine Grace. And then it's usually just, like on the books, His Divine Grace, then A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And once, I don't know when exactly, but I just kind of vaguely remember an edition of, I don't know what it was, maybe it was Krishna book or some Chaitanya Charitamrita, not Chaitanya Charitamrita, Teachings of the Lord Chaitanya. Something was printed after Prabhupada was referred to as A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, and that was printed on the books also. And then another book was printed, and Prabhupada was omitted there and was not on the books. And if I'm not mistaken, this was some influence that was coming from India saying that it's wrong. And the devotee then, without consulting His Divine Grace, changed that, and Prabhupada was very upset about this. So, and it's still there today. I mean, I have many friends in the Gaudiya Math, but make no mistake about it, all over the place. I don't know if there's any branch that I can say is exclusively non-biased about our Guru Maharaj being called Prabhupada. In other words, they all maintain a bias that is not every individual, but I'd say someone in every mutt I've ever been in, there's someone who's got a bee in their bonnet about hearing or seeing the printed word Prabhupada in relation to our Guru Maharaj.
Mm-hmm.
And many devotees, even to this present day, who have come from ISKCON and whatnot, they go to and hang out at these Gaudiya mutts and whatnot. And in some of them, at a point, they're taken aside and they're told, look, you don't refer to your Guru Maharaj here as Prabhupada. And furthermore, Bhaktivedanta is Prabhupada here, and furthermore, it's wrong. It's wrong,
Yeah.
Well, they can just take that to the grave and we'll never accept that. But just to give a reference here, Srila Sridhar Maharaj, Bhakti-Rakshak Sridhar Maharaj, this was brought to his attention for his opinion, and he had no objection whatsoever. And he stated this long, long back, or we should have got that from the archive. We have that in the archive transcribed. He had no objection to our Guru Maharaj being called Prabhupada by our Guru Maharaj's disciples or grand disciples. He had no objection to that whatsoever. But that said, I'll have to say that in every single Gaudiya mutt that exists, there is objection to that. Not that everybody objects to that. No. In places where I know personally the Acharya, no objection, perfectly fine with that. Addressing our Guru Maharaj even when in preaching in the West as the Swami Prabhupada or whatever, using that name Prabhupada, no objection, and certainly not, not saying that with the same affection we do, but for our benefit, for the Westerners' benefit, for acknowledging their Prabhupada, they will say that. But even within their ashrams, there are people that say, no, it is not. They should not say it is wrong. So, but Srila Sridhar Maharaj stepped right up, stepped forward, and said, no issue here, no complaint. I wished I should have looked this up. I could give you his exact words. So there you have it. And Srila is just, Srila, Shri, Shripad. They're just little extras, Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Ki Jai.
Hari Hari Bol.
All right, so that's what do you call that? The ontology of...
ontology.
Ontology of the development of our Guru Maharaj's name, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So thank you all for watching, and hope the transmission works out fine. Until next time, Hare Krishna.